Hello all and welcome to TFF Podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, our first episode of the 24-25 season as we talk all things Telegraph Fantasy Football. My name is Fergie and I'm joined as usual, I think this is our fifth season now, by two superb Telegraph fantasy managers. Firstly, Luke Wilson, who's just come off the back of a 9-hour drive to rush to get here. Great to have you back, Luke, and how are you apart from incredibly tired, I'm guessing?
Drive is not the right word. I sat at a service station for most of it, and but no good. Enjoyed taking a break from all fantasy stuff over the things. So I'm raring to go. So quite excited actually.
Superb, but yeah. So Luke's car broke down, so it's actually worked in all our favours here. Because Luke got to, instead of driving home the last 3 hours, he got to look on his phone at some TFF tips and players and stuff. So he is fully primed to impart his wisdom for the coming season.
No pressure then.
No pressure. We also have the Hub's resident statistician, Carl Weeks. Welcome, Carl. Great to have you back. And how have things been with you?
Yeah, no, everything's been great. Like a lot of people out there, I've been watching the Euros and I'm really excited for the Premier League to start. Just over a week away. It's very exciting indeed, and getting stuck into selecting maybe a winning team for the Telegraph. We'll find out soon.
Let's hope. If you win, Carl, we go halves. If I win, we don't. How's that? For our YouTube watchers, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen to show you don't miss anything. And also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. Just some news firstly on this channel. As you know, this used to be the Sky FF and Telegraph Fantasy channel. Sky has ceased. If you haven't heard yet, sorry to break the news, but Sky has ceased to exist. So this is now the Telegraph and Nip and a Half Fantasy Football podcast channel. So Paul McNulty and I will be replacing the Sky weekly stream with a weekly stream at the same time, Monday evening, called Nip and a Half. If you haven't seen it before, it's a kind of an informal, light-hearted look at our fantasy teams across Telegraph, FPL, and Dream Team, and just having a light-hearted chat. So hopefully, if you used to tune in here for Sky and you do for Telegraph, hopefully we'll have a worthy replacement. So do make sure you subscribe and like, and we should be doing our first episode sometime next week. So in this first episode of the Telegraph for the season, we're firstly going to run quickly through the basics of the game, because there's lots of new players this season, lots of converting Sky players, and there's new Cloud Fantasy players as well. And we're also going to give some early tips on how to do well at Telegraph. It's a different game. There's lots of nuances in this game from other fantasy games, but between myself, Luke, and Carl, I think we've all been playing this game for a hell of a long time. So we'll try and impart not only the rules, but impart some of the kind of tips and stuff which have led us to do quite well over the years. We're not going to spend too much time on this because we want to keep the pod moving. But if you want to know any more, you can take a look at our How to Play Telegraph Fantasy Football and How to Win at Telegraph Fantasy Football guides, which are both in the links below. The biggest tip I would give if you wanted the best chance of doing well is to join our dedicated Fantasy Football Hub WhatsApp group. You do need to be a Pro Hub member to do this. Us three are in there. We've got former winners in there. We've actually got the guy, Callum, who works for the Telegraph in the group as well. So, it's a really great group of really engaged managers. I say we've got, I think the last 2 or 3 former champions in there as well. If you do want to join this WhatsApp group, again, join the link below, 50% off to become a Hub member for the season. We share our teams, our thoughts. I give weekly voice notes, and you also get access to my Game Week 1 and my weekly team reveals in all fantasy formats. It's a no-brainer if you want to do well and win your Telegraph mini leagues. After we've done the kind of intro of the game and stuff, we're going to look at last year's data, courtesy as usual of Carl, before delving into our picks and plans ahead of Game Week 1. And we've all done a draft, and they are all very, very different, which is really interesting. But firstly, just some of the basics of the rules and the scoring for Telegraph. Basic rules, should be aware of, a massive change for anyone who hasn't played the Telegraph or Dream Team before, that the Telegraph game includes a Premier League, but it also includes the FA Cup as well from the 3rd round onwards. So from I think it's the first week in January is normally the FA Cup third round. Those matches count as well. That's a big change, and a big difference to playing at other fancy formats. You can enter up to 5 teams, which we'll touch on in a bit. It sounds mad. Any FPL players or even Sky who've not played before may think that's mad, 5 teams, but you can mix and match, or as James Ingram, our who's a hub member in our WhatsApp group, he came first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and fourth and fifth last year. He won all 5 prizes in the overall game last year by kind of having the same team all the way through, and then he just changed a few things just towards the end, just to make sure that he could ensure his wins. You can do it that way. There's a budget of 50 million, and there are no price changes, and you pick 11 players only, and you can pick from 7 different formations. So the formations, you've got all the kind of 5s at the back all the way through to the 3 at the back. It's very, very flexible there. You get 40 transfers per season, maximum 5 a week. So Sky managers will be used to that. I think it ends up on 50, but you only get 40 over the year, max 5. You can make transfers between matches. So this is a big thing. There's games on a Sunday. One match kicks off at 2:30, another starts at 4:00. You can make transfers between those matches, and you can even do it so far as towards the end of the season when matches go on kind of Amazon Prime in the middle of the week, and there's a game kicking off at 7:30 and another one at 7:45. You can actually get points from both of those games if you make a transfer between those two times as well. So you can, if you want, make transfers basically between every single game in the Premier League as long as they start at different times. There's no captains, there are no wild cards, and there are no chips, which it kind of makes this game the kind of purest of the fantasy games. If you win TFF overall, a nice prize of £5,000. They're the basic rules. I just wanted to score, and I won't run through all of them, but you get appearance points, 5 points for a goal, 3 for an assist, are the kind of main ones. And there are a couple of bonus points as well, which are really important. For every 2 saves a keeper makes, they get a bonus point, and for every 2 tackles a midfielder makes, they get a bonus point as well. And there's things, and one of the other things which is quite good is you get 5 points for a clean sheet if someone plays 60 minutes or more. But you do get part clean sheets, which is the only game that does this. So if you come on, if a defender comes on in the 75th minute, anytime after 60, and their team keeps a clean sheet and continues to keep a clean sheet, you get 2 extra points as well, which I quite like. So they're the main sort of scoring changes there. Anything I've missed there, gents? Interestingly, Carl said just before we came on that he needed a bit of a refresh of the rules, I think. But anything jump out there as kind of important, or anyone want to embellish on anything at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned about 5 points for the goal. Whereas in most other games out there, you have more points for a midfielder and defender scoring than the striker, which isn't the case here. You mentioned partial clean sheets. Is it also that on other games you get banked clean sheets if you get subbed off and concede a goal? That's not the case in Telegraph.
It's not. You don't get banked. So if your defender goes off in the 88th minute and they concede in the 89th, you don't get a clean sheet in this format. That's right. Yeah. So it's a bit of a switch around from the other games in both those facets, actually. Yeah. Anything to add, Luke? Are you happy to move on?
No, move on. Got a couple of extra tips to add to your list, though.
Oh, superb! So, we've got some tips. Do you guys recognise that medal on the right hand side? A bit of nostalgia there. The Telegraph used to do medals for all mini league winners. Yeah, the few of them from back. They used to come in a really nice little case, didn't they? They were really nice. They were. But yeah, we've just kind of highlighted a few tips to get yourself started well in Telegraph as well. First of all, pick a rounded and flexible Starting 11 again for those of you who play Sky and and stuff. Your starting 11 is actually really important. If you remember, there's no wild cards, no overhauls, so your starting 11 is what it is, and you've only got 40 transfers over a season. You don't want to be wasting transfers, having to make 2 to get Haaland in or to get Salah in or whatever else. You need to make sure that your starting 11 has got the right price points you want. It's very rounded as well. If you can go really heavy at the back or really heavy up front, but you have to be aware that if things don't go your way to start off with, you're going to have to use transfers early doors to shift it around. So having a very kind of rounded and flexible starting 11, for me anyway, is really important. I mentioned about the 5 teams, different strategies. So you can have sort of blocks. I mention block defense a bit earlier on. You can have a block Arsenal defense. You can have all Arsenal defenders in one team. You can have all West Ham defenders and all Everton in another, just to start. And if one of these teams really kicks on, so say Everton, for example, have all got really cheap defenders. If they just so happen to keep 3 or 4 clean sheets in their first 4 or 5 games, for example, you are off to an absolute flyer with that team. I'd expect it, obviously, because if you only had one team, you probably wouldn't pick that. But it can give an advantage. So that's kind of one way of using the different teams. But another way as well is to maybe something I'm going to do. I've spotted quite a lot of bargain forwards. Just an example, this year there's lots of forwards in the in the 3 to 4 million bracket are incredibly cheap, and I'm going to kind of take a punt potentially on a front line of maybe something like Muniz, João Pedro, and Solanke, for example, which are mega cheap, but just means you can have a premium defense and midfield as well, for example. So you can try different strategies with different teams, and see how you get on. The best tip that I would ever give in Telegraph is I say I've been playing now for, I don't know, nearly showing my age now, but nearly 30 years, I think, kind of 25 years minimum on this one, and it's to break the season in half and think long term. So when I say break the season in half, you generally want to try and get to Christmas or New Year with, if you can, only using between round about 10 to 12 odd transfers, but still being in a reasonable position as well. Again, those of you who've come from Sky will know around the 3-for-1s and 4-to-1s you kind of get in the second half of the season as games are moved around. Chuck the FA Cup in that as well, and you see 4-for-1s, 5-for-1s, potentially 6-for-1s, 7-for-2s, all this sort of stuff. And that's where, as we know, we get all the gains. So some of the the best tip I think you can ever give in Telegraph is just keep a really solid, rounded playing team. But if you can, try and get to if you can get yourself in the top 10 to 15k with between 28 plus transfers left at Christmas, you've got a really good shout of a really good finish. So that's kind of breaking the season in half. Only try and use maybe 10 and then smash the second half of the season, because all the casual managers will just be hammering the transfers. So your league position, your overall rank position and mini league position in the first half won't be reflective of where you'll end up if you're sensible and when you really attack the second half of the season. Jump on cheap players. It's probably fairly obvious across all of fantasy, but again, we've got no wild cards. Like Cole Palmer last year sort of broke the game. He was only 2.5 million last year, but as soon as you got him in, he's in for the season, and you can just spread the rest of that budget all around your team, and consider FA Cup involvement. So I don't really tend to consider FA Cup as much as everyone else, and it's purely because a lot of players get rested, and you can almost over-engineer your team a touch. But those FA Cup, if you see a starting 11, for example, if Crystal Palace are home to a non-league side, which does happen, don't forget you can see the lineups, right? So if Mateta is starting at home with a non-league side, you might be incredibly tempted to jump in and try and bang 2 or 3 goals off one of your players. But obviously depends potentially which fixtures they've got before and after as well. But yeah, don't want to go too much into all this. There's much more in the guides that are there. There's a really detailed strategy guide on how to do well at Telegraph in the links below. Luke, you said you may have a couple of points to add on.
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate So if you use more than 10 transfers between now and Christmas, you're behind all the good players. So all the good ones, par will be about somewhere between about 8 and 12 transfers used for Christmas. So just because, use it for those cheap players, and if you can bring in a really good player as a result of that, fine, do it, but don't go mad. The biggest tip I think I can give in this is, because there's no captains, it's a game of value. So it's very, very, very different to all the others, why we all call it the purist game. So Haaland at 8.5 this year, Haaland scores 250 points, and a player at 2.2 million scores 100 points. That player at 2.2 million is way better than Haaland. So this is not about owning all the good players. This is about getting the most value you can get from 50 million spend. So it's very different to FPL and Sky because of that lack of captain. So yeah, don't get blinded by really cool players, but they will score more points. So if you've got budget left over after really good value, it's worth it. But yeah, I'm interested to see if the guys have got Haaland, but he's nowhere near my team at that value.
Really,
Nowhere near.
Wow, okay. I didn't
He's
think
got to
he
score
would
350 points for him to be worthwhile in my mind.
I didn't think he would be in my team, but I have rooted out quite a lot of enablers this year, so he's currently in mine anyway. Anything to add, Carl, from sort of tips or strategy at all?
No, you're both two wise men who cover most stuff. Really, at the beginning, and it's just reiterating what you sort of said. But in many ways, you want your team to be quite dull.
Yeah,
in terms of you don't take risks like, oh, so and so's bought someone from France or wherever, because if they don't play, and quite often they don't at the beginning, you're wasting transfers. So pick a good solid team. We may talk about it later. In previous seasons, I agree, use as minimal as possible, and you can really attack in the back end of the season because of the FA Cup and rearranged games.
Yeah,
that won't happen this year.
It's changing. It's changing.
And
you're right. You are right.
And it does impact on the strategy quite a bit, or it won't be as powerful as it has been in previous seasons. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, really good point there, Carl. Definitely, yeah. The lack of FPL double game weeks and blank game weeks, as we kind of all know about, is going to impact on this as well. Yeah, so we'll definitely talk about that. Cool. So let's have a look at some of the top scorers from last season. I'll stop talking. I'm going hoarse already. For don't stop talking yet. But just some of the. I'll just call out some of the top point scorers from last year in the different positions. So the keepers: Onana top 177, Pickford was second, Raya third, Jose Sarr fourth, and Leno was fifth. Vicario, if you remember, he was so cheap, wasn't he? Because I think Spurs had. I think TFF had priced him as if he was going to be a reserve keeper, but he came in at number one, didn't he? Which was brilliant. Ben White, Saliba, and Gabriel, they were all top of the shop for Arsenal, and unsurprisingly. And then after that, three Man City defenders: Walker, Gvardiol, and Akanji, with Branthwaite and Tarkowski also in the top 8 or 9 of there, who are again really cheap this year as well. Palmer. I mean, what a bump. He's 5.8 million this year. He was 2.5 last year. He was top of the midfield charts. I think he was top of he wasn't quite top of the game. Haaland was top of the game, but he was second overall, second point scorer overall. And bear in mind, he didn't even start the season, did he, for Chelsea? I don't think. He didn't play the first few games. Absolutely insane performance, Palmer there. Foden was second. He comes in at 5.4 this year. Saka third, Bruno fourth. That one with Bruno surprised me, because I think it's probably fair to say that Bruno probably massively underperformed last year in terms of kind of output anyway. So the fact that he still got 200 plus points in this format is pretty insane, really. So I kind of caught that out earlier. Gordon finished fifth. He's had a rise, but he's still quite cheap at 4.7. And then Bowen and Bruno Gomes is another one who's quite cheap. And then strikers, Erling Haaland, 247 points, the top scorer in the game. Massive bump, 8.5 million, which is absolutely crazy. Watkins third, 5.7. Isak, I don't know, but I would guess he'd be in most people's teams at that price, 5.1. Salah, 187. Solanke, 183. Obviously, might be going off to Spurs, but yeah, some really interesting points there. Carl first. Have you got anything to kind of call out on the top point scorers from last season? Obviously, Haaland's top, as Luke mentioned. He may not be value though. Anything you want to call out at all?
Yeah, I'll just make a few points. For you got the top points, and we'll talk about points per million and points per million per game.
Yeah.
Probably on the next slides. You mentioned Bruno and you mentioned the Arsenal defence, and said not surprisingly, it is quite surprisingly for the Arsenal defence because they got knocked out, as far as I remember, in the third round of the FA Cup. So they played like Bruno got to the FA Cup final, so he had
that's a good point.
like an extra 6. He had an extra 6 games. Arsenal was out in the first round, and they had less games. So there's things there, and some of these players, maybe their points are a little bit inflated. So we sort of talk about Palmer, and you're right about Palmer. He's fantastic. I love watching him play. Great goals. He started the season late, and he scored 22 goals. But if you go to a bookmaker, they expect him to score about 16 goals this year. So he had more chances than you'd probably typically expect. So there's one or two players which may have just had a good run, and therefore they're sort of top of these positions. And
he had lots of penalties, didn't he, as well? It was about 12 penalties he had or something. It was something crazy like that. I think, or maybe 11.
Yeah, he had a lot of penalties, and maybe they don't get as many penalties next season. I don't know, and that's why his goals may have been boosted.
Yeah, and he also, I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, but there's lots of players who may not actually start in game week 1 as well, obviously because of hangovers from the Euros and Copa America and the Olympics and everything else. So
yeah, but as you'd expect, all the most expensive players and all the top players are at the top of the table.
Yep, indeed. Luke, anything to add from this one? I think the most interesting one is the next one, but anything to add on this?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's the points per million is the really important one. I think just on that point about those players, or they might not start the first couple of games, transfer's worth a lot in this game.
Yeah,
so if you want a player in who's you're gonna have to move a few players around to get him in. I either think, well, I'll bring him in after 5 games when the fixtures change or something, and have a known transfer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, missing a couple of games. Every player pretty much misses 2, 3, 4 games a season. So if you know they're going to miss the first couple, cool, they'll probably come back firing when they come in anyway. So I would build the team you want for like a block of 18 games.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because I noticed you've got Foden in your team. Immediately thought, I'm not having Foden, but then you are right. He'll very likely be, if he doesn't start game week 1, he'd be back probably home to Ipswich in game week 2 anyway. So yeah, it's a really good point you make there, Luke. Points per million is where it's at in this game. As both the chaps have mentioned, this game is all about value. And this is where we actually get to see what kind of players are good value in this game. So these are last season's points against their price for this season. So this actually shows what they would have scored last year at this season's price, which is interesting. So Pickford would have been top of the keepers, followed by Onana, Neto for Bournemouth. Did hear something. Apparently, there's some Bournemouth fans saying that Neto may not start and Travers may potentially start. Now, if Travers does start the season, we get word he is 2.3 million, by the way. So hello, indeed. Flecken is 4th, and Leno there is 5th. In terms of defenders, Branthwaite comes out top, so he's still only priced at 3 million this year, which is incredibly cheap. And Tarkowski, so Everton defenders are really cheap still. Tarkowski's 3.1. Ben White, even though he's 4.6 million, still comes in 3rd in terms of value per money still. So if he can replicate last year, he's still going to be a really good pick. Anderson and Mitchell for Palace look maybe quite underpriced as well still. Michaelenko Everton. So it looks like Everton and Palace may be where the value is at potentially this year. And then we go down. Looking into midfielders, João Gomez has been the talk of the Fantasy Football Hub WhatsApp chat, 2.9 million. I don't know if either of you guys know how many tackles he got last year. Any guesses?
120. Only because I don't know. It may be 126. He's probably top because I produced a chart that we'll sort of talk about.
Oh,
a
yeah.
bit later. So it's on the chart. So I have the ballpark.
This is why I love Carl being on this.
Higher,
I was going to look like an idiot there. He saved me.
higher or lower, Luke, do you think, than Carl's 126?
I'm going to go slightly lower. I would have gone a lot lower, actually, but
Well,
slightly lower.
I think unless Carl's got it wrong, it's actually 136 is my
Oh, it's
understanding.
higher. Blimey.
That's exactly the same as he scored in number of points. So yeah, 2.9 million for a tackle
Ridiculous.
machine.
Monster.
Really, really cheap there. Sean Longstaff is only 2.8 million this year as well. He got 130 points. Bruno Gomes got 178 points, and he's still only 3.9 million. I'm sure he missed quite a big
few games. Yeah, he missed quite a few. I had him in my first draft, actually.
Agree. Lamina for Wolves again, another big tackler, got 130 points. Gibbs White scored 146 points, 3.4, and James Garn, who was unfortunately injured, was in there as well. And then up front, as usual, it's the cheaper strikers who are up there for value. Cunha is top. He's only 3.6 million this year. Got 152 points last year. Solanke, he had an outstanding year. If he's Spurs number 9 at 4.4 million, wow, that could be something. Nicholas Jackson last year was only 4 million, got 165 points. Ollie Watkins, decent value. João Pedro is a really interesting one, I think. 3.3 million as well. He had the 5th best, and again, I think he missed quite a portion of the season. He played in Europe a lot, didn't he? But yeah,
he got dropped a lot because he was the one I was shouting out last season.
That was it. You're right.
But
then he scored pens in Europe every week, didn't he? Then so
that thing about don't have a bias against a player. Well, he's probably not coming anywhere near my team for a while.
Spoiler alert: he's in my starting 11 at the moment. Maybe as a placeholder, but he is in there. Luke, anything to kind of shout out on here? Anyone kind of catching your eye? Gomez, I know.
No, I mean there's a few actually. I mean, I think the Everton defenders are woefully underpriced with Sean Dyche as the manager. I think they'll be better this season. Yeah. Again, he's always tight. I think I guess those that are new to the game. I mean, I think you're not seeing the big players coming up in the goalkeeper list, which is quite an interesting one. Alisson historically has been I think last 3 out of the last 4, maybe even 4 out of the last 5, he's been the top scoring keeper. So he's one that could come back, but I don't know how Liverpool are going to play under a new manager, so he won't be starting for me. But he's one that could be very interesting. Is priced for what he's been historically, so he's maybe one to shout out because he's way down that list.
Yep. You look and Carl, what do you want to shout out on this list?
Okay, it's one thing that you sort of as you talked, and it reminded me of a sort of tip, is there is no game week in the Telegraph.
Yeah.
And it means that when you start talking about Neto may not play for Bournemouth, you don't have to enter your team before the first kickoff.
That's a really good shout, actually, Carl.
Yeah, so you can wait until Saturday at 3 o'clock. If you don't want the Man United, Fulham, or Ipswich, Liverpool players, you can wait and see all the team sheets on the first Saturday of those ones that you're unsure about.
That's a really, really good point.
So that is a possibility. But yeah, in terms of the players, there's quite a few value ones that do look there. And as Luke sort of said, you've got your Everton ones. I'm a bit more interested in the next table that we look at.
A couple of players on there, isn't there?
Yeah. So that's where I would tend to focus much more on points per pounds, because one of the things that happens is sometimes you get players who've been injured for a little while, like Eza, and therefore his points per million is lower than otherwise be the case. And you also have players that have been transferred in January, and therefore you want to sort of like make some sort of adjustments for their games as well. So I'll wait until the next slides.
I've just brought it up now, and you're absolutely right, Carl. So Travers, we already mentioned, Travers of Bournemouth is top of the keepers.
Yeah.
You go, Carl. Go on.
Well, this side's pretty similar in terms, but there's a few players. I think you already mentioned him. When the problem is with this side, you'll also get some players like Bradley is the top defender in terms of points per games, but he's unlikely to play that much. So you have to sort of like bring in a bit of your knowledge here.
Yeah.
But when you go down the defenders list, number 3 is Nunes for Palace, the attacking defender that you sort of like mentioned about before.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a godsend in the game. And he's got, for his price, he scores like 1.25, which is highest defender by some distance compared to the others. So he's probably top value. And one of my favourite players is Walton, Adam Walton. Also, sorry, I'm a Palace fan. So Walton of Palace.
Yeah.
He scores at 1.21. He's about 5th or 6th in that list. And he does extremely well. Of course, with the new signings, it depends exactly what you do, but I can imagine he will only score better this year because he's probably got quite a few tackles, but his passing is just incredible. And they just weren't finished off last year. So those would be the two I would look at as two good enablers.
Yep. Thank you, Carl. Good stuff. Luke, does anyone strike you in this one? You want to shout out?
I mean, history tells me if Carl shouts out a Palace player, jump on them.
So Carl shouted out Conor Gallagher. I think it was 3 or 4 seasons ago, and I don't think, Luke, you and I had even heard of him, had we?
No.
And and Carl was waxing lyrical about this Conor Gallagher who's going to be incredibly cheap, who was going to get all these bonus points, and I think it ended up he was on everything, wasn't he? He had his breakout year for Palace. He was unbelievable. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out for those. Travers in goals have mentioned if he does steal the Bournemouth spot 2.3, I mean, what an enabler he is, incredible. It looks like Johnston might be potentially even leaving Palace, I heard this afternoon, which may mean Henderson at 2.8 for Palace looks really good value. I think at the moment he'd probably be in my team, actually, though I'm not keen of a double up with him and Munoz. I don't really like two Palace defenders. Sorry, Carl, being a Palace fan, but I don't want half my defence being Palace when there's all this other stuff. Everton defenders, as you said, João Gomez is in there again, Longstaff is in there again.
Bradley will be very, very interesting if Trent does move further forward, like into midfield.
Good show.
He was really good when he played, really, really good.
I think probably Eze is the most expensive midfielder in that list at 3.9. And again, I think he missed quite a portion of the season as well, so he's in my team at the moment as well. And Awoniyi, 2.7 million if he gets the start. Awoniyi, we do mention him every year, but if he gets the start, not sure he's going to start the season, which means Chris Wood at 3.5. They've got spanking fixtures to start. You can even start with Wood and go to Awoniyi, if you're kind of that way inclined. But 2.7 million for Awoniyi is ridiculous. If he ends up being the number 9 at Forest, 2.7 million. What an enabler! Imagine having him and Travers in your team. You wouldn't even need any more enablers. The price is just insane.
Well, actually, there's Semenyo at Bournemouth. I've been trying to work out whether he's going to play or not. But particularly if Solanke moves, I think he will. I mean, because he didn't play loads last season, but when he did, he was really good.
He was very good.
And at 2.8, he's one to look at. I think, particularly if you're light on budget, he could be a great enabler.
Really good shout. And the last of the kind of looking backs at last year, just looking at the bonus points for what the players got. So, as I mentioned earlier, you get bonus points for saves and for tackles. So, in terms of saves, Onana was top. 75 saves. Save points. He had 169 saves. He makes the most saves in the Premier League last year. 75 points, crazy. I still think, I don't know if he's too expensive or not. He started 43 games. I think he probably was
Well,
that
the FA
every
Cup
almost
games,
every
isn't it, as
game.
well,
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Incredible there. 169
It shows how
points.
bad Man United's defence is, though, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
well, it does. Sarr made 156 saves for Wolves. Areola 138. And you can see the save points next to those as well. Interestingly, if you look at Henderson and Johnston's combined, they only make 105 saves between them, which puts them below mid-table, which probably means, again, defensively they're going to be quite sound. They're quite excited for Henderson. And then tackles, João Gomez. I'm not sure how much Palhinha got. I'm not sure if he got more than Gomez or not. He's not in this list, obviously, because now he's gone off to Bayern, but João Gomez, far and away the highest, 136. He's only 2.9 million. That looks an absolute bargain. Moses Caicedo got 108 tackles for Chelsea, 3.6. McAllister, 107. Bruno Guimaraes, we mentioned him earlier, 3.9 million, made 100 tackles, got 40 points off tackles only. And then Garner, Lamina, and Christie. But I suppose a question, just looking at bonus points now, how much... Firstly, Carl, how much do you factor in these bonus points when picking your team, firstly? And secondly, would you pick a bonus point player ahead of a more attacking player if you had enough budget to go for a more attacking player?
It's a very good question. On the first point, I would tend to take more notice of the tackles. Like here, in relation to the person's price. So if they're cheap, then you have more faith that they've probably got more regular starts, and also their value's quite high. If you're sort of talking about a more expensive player who had lots of tackles, well, I would probably give it a bit more as a negative, because you want the upside. There's no point in sort of like just getting average. You would want somebody who could score and be on a good run, and therefore take the upside. Though if the prices were a bit lower, say for Bruno, it's always good to have somebody who does both, who scores goals and picks up some tackles at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you there, Cal. Luke, what's your thoughts on those?
Well, if you see, well, we all got sort of blinkered last year, didn't we? I can't remember what the lad's name was at Luton, but we all sort of, he was 2.2 or something, wasn't he, for the tackle?
Oh, Nakamba. Was it
Nakamba? But he wasn't quite as good as we caught. Yeah, it was Nakamba. But I think it's a really good thing for the serious managers, because I'm looking down that list there, and of the players, like Gomez, 136 points, Eze, 131 points, right? Who's everybody got? If you look at teams selected by, well, one's like almost, well, he's exactly $1 million cheaper. Like what? So I think it's a really important thing. And again, I mean, we called this out last year. I would like to see some of these bonus magnet players get slightly higher prices. Cool, adjust them, because you did ask the question on last year's pod of when Palmer was going mental. There was I can't remember who it was, but there was 2.5 million, and you were like, "Oh, are you sure you want to go after the one with the attacking?" I was like, every time, if they're the same price. If they're not the same price, I'll have the bonus magnet person every time. Because it's get like 5 points a game versus 2 points. I'll take the 5 points every week. It's brilliant. So it's important. It's not essential, but it's all comes back to price.
I think it is, and it's interesting because looking at my starting 11, I know we're still kind of 9 days out from game week 1, right? But I haven't got any. I've gone all for the goal scorers, so and penalty takers, rightly or wrongly. But I'm pretty sure that my draft will change considerably after the conversation. But depends, right? We've already mentioned there's, there looks to be really good value in Palace and Everton defence, for example. They look incredibly cheap. You just got money to spend then, so why wouldn't you go after the goals? So yeah, it'd be interesting to have a chat about that later. Quick look at the promoted teams. I put my hand up. I'm not au fait as much with this at all. Carl, I know you've done a bit of analysis on promoted teams. Do any of them catch your eye? Will any be in your starting 11?
Yeah. Well, I must admit I don't know a lot about them. I just look at the stats. So what I tend to do is I go through, is it FRF, and look at all the games from last year and just try to sort of summarise it. And I've got the table here, and I've listed it much more. There's two things to look for. One is the percentage of there's like goal percentage. So if somebody plays in a match, how many percentage of goals did they contribute? So on top of that is Vardy, and when he played, he scored like 31% of the goals, but he only played 17 games. And when you go down the list, the one that sort of jumps out at me a little bit, and who could be a very value player, is Armstrong of Southampton. He's a striker. He's priced at 3 million. He played 46 games, so that's most of them. He had 27% of the goals and 15% of the assists for Southampton.
3 million.
So that converts very well into prospects going forward. I've also looked at SpreadX, where they give the market, and they reckon he's expected to score about 7.5 to 8 goals. So he's on a very similar, maybe one goal behind Pedro of Brighton, who's a little bit cheaper. Yeah. So he could be a bit of value. In terms of the Ipswich strikers, there's several of them, and they're all between 2.5 and 3 million, but none of them have played like the whole 40 games, and none of them like come out of huge percentages in terms of their goal contribution. So I probably wouldn't tend to go for any of those at this stage. And the only other thing that you look for is, because we like talked about tackles before, for the midfield players, I've listed out how many tackles they had last year, and there's one player who jumps out quite well, and I didn't realise, but I think he's the Ipswich captain. Is it Morsey? He's only 2.4 million.
Wow.
He played 42 games last year, and he had 119 tackles.
Woohoo! There's the points.
So
that's a shout. Yeah.
Bring
him in.
He's in a different league now, and I know people sort of say, "Oh, in a Premier League, tougher, he may get more, but he may not get as close."
Yeah,
so,
of course.
I'm
going to just jump in on that, because we've seen that before. Like the tackle monsters in the league below, they go up a level and they can't even get close to the ball because the ball's moving so much faster. So that's a good indicator. That's one of those, for me, that's a watch and see. And if after 5 games he's keeping that pace, bring him in. That's a great enabler. But yeah, for me, I wouldn't bring him in to start with. But that's a great shout out though. And that'll be the one for this year, isn't it?
He got 3 goals and six assists as well. Again, it is a step up, so you can't expect that again. But if you started with Morsey and Gomez and Travers and Awonyi, you can basically have anyone else you bloody wanted in the whole game. Superb.
At 2.4 million, he's so cheap.
That's proper cheap.
And he plays, and he's got a good chance of getting tackles, even if he only gets half as much, because he's so cheap.
Of course, the value will be good.
He's got a lot of upside, because if he replicates that, he's going to be up there with the other ones that we sort of talked about. And even if he is only half as much, he will still come in at decent value. And being the captain, you'd expect him to play all the time. So that those would be the two I would look out for from the promoted.
What a shout, Carl! A couple of great shouts there. Good stuff. And Carl, so he builds out the optimum team, and again, this is based on last season's points with this year's prices to work out what the best overall team would be. So do you just want to talk us through this, Carl, quickly?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I've done things a little bit different this year, but very similar. On the left-hand side, well, I picked out three teams. On the left-hand side, I've got what we call the normal optimal team, and this is just based on the number of points, meet the budget, based on so it's gone for 3-3-5-2. Banana in goal, Ben White, Gabriel, Braithwaite in defence, Palmer, Foden, Bruno Gomez, Colin Gallagher, Anthony Gordon in midfield, Watkins and Slanky up front. And in total, that would have scored 2,043 points, which that is the optimal team if you made no transfers throughout the whole season. So yeah, that's pretty good. What I've done though is I thought there's a few players I would quite like to see in that team, and I thought I'd try to normalize it. So what I mean by normalize is I've sort of said like some of those people have got to the FA Cup final, and some of played 40 odd games, and some of them only played half a season. So what I've done is I've adjusted everybody's points as if they played 38 games. So I've either uprated them or downrated them. So the next one is I've just sort of said that if they only played 38 games, that team would have only scored 1,951.
Nice.
But if I optimized on players who played 38 games, you'd get the list on the right where you'd have David Raya in goal, Ben Wright, Braithwaite still in there. The Ukrainian from Everton is
Michaelenko.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then in midfield you got Palmer, Bowen, Saka, and Eze.
Nice.
Up front you got Isaac, Watkins, and Kuna of Wolves. So the 4-3-4-3. The reason I sort of thought of this is I thought, well, I want to see Bolton and Munoz in there.
Yeah.
So because they'd played half a season, I thought they would. But it just sort of gives a flavour of on both of them. They only go for three at the back.
Yeah.
And it's three. It is some players they appear in both, but I think that one on the right hand side is probably the better of the two teams.
And no Haaland.
Just looking around for a Haaland.
No, no Salah.
Haaland.
No Haaland, no Salah.
They're too expensive.
No Son.
Forwards are overpriced as always. Too expensive.
Crazy, yeah. So I get this. This is always my kind of favorite slide of the whole show. It basically tells you what the best team was, and basically what we should be looking to kind of replicate.
I'm happy.
It's looking nothing like mine. I'll be changing mine after this. But yeah, thanks again, Carl. Absolutely superb analysis every single time. Brilliant stuff. So let's look forward now to the players that we are interested in going into this. So I've picked out, just to kind of kick off the conversation, I've picked out a few players I'm interested in. I picked out a budget player, a mid-price player, and a premium for all positions. Since I actually wrote this, I've changed my mind on one or two actually. But I'll start on keepers. If we can start on keepers first. So I did have Flecken at 2.9, but I think Henderson at 2.8, just judging by the news this afternoon, probably looks to be the best keeper. If Travers does start the season at 2.3, that is going to be insane value. For mid-price, I picked out Pickford at 3.7. Still think that's a pretty good price for an Everton keeper. Bear in mind, you get the save points on top of that as well. I picked out Raya, 4.3, if I was to pick a premium. Carl, have you got anything to add on the keepers? Anyone on your short list or anything?
No, like you say, you've got Henderson. Onana would be the only other one.
Yeah, 4.1 Onana. He's good in this game, Onana, isn't he?
He makes a lot of saves, and
he does.
United aren't going to concede as many as they did last year.
Yeah, agree. Anything to add on keepers, Luke?
No, I mean, I think we talked about it earlier, but the Alisson could at 4.5. He's very expensive, but if Liverpool shore up, he could be the premium keeper again. But let's see. I've got Rare in my team, so I'm not risking it now. But let's see.
I've got a few other picks just for each of the positions. On the keepers, Chelsea keepers, Sanchez is 3.4, Joe Jensen is 2.9. So if Joe Jensen manages to hold the place down, 2.9 for Chelsea keeper could be pretty good. Probably later in the season, but it's one to monitor. Sells at Forest is 3.2 if he gets the Forest one. And Muric, actually, he's Ipswich now. He's only 2.5 million, but he made an insane amount of saves last year. He's not going to keep many clean sheets, I don't think, but save-wise, he could clean up. But the one to keep an eye on, I think, Henderson and Travers is the one at 2.3.
Can I just sort of say on some of the keepers that you mentioned there, and you did caveat sort of saying keep an eye on, or they may not get in. At the beginning, we sort of said be a bit dull, go for solid people.
Go for the ones you're going to start with, yeah, definitely.
Because even the Chelsea keeper, even if you know who's starting in game week 1, they may, unless it's like certain, they could change in game week 4, and then you're just using another transfer.
Yeah, that's fair.
For what, for those types, just wait until Christmas time or much longer term when it's certain.
Yeah, there's the variance on the keepers. Like, I mean, it's probably worth calling out that the average points per game is quite similar from the top 10 keepers from last year. And so the keepers, I think, are priced really well, but there isn't that much difference between them, because if you're in a bad team, you get saves. If you're in a good team, you get clean sheets, and it sort of evens itself out that you will get a bit more for the clean sheets. But there isn't, but they are the most valuable, but they are so consistent. So I would definitely advise that stick with your keeper for a while, unless there is a glaringly obvious misplaced price or somebody that breaks into a team that shouldn't have done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Moving on to defenders. Who do you like in defense, Luke?
I mean, I'm surprised you haven't got Branthwaite in as a budget at 3 million. There's a few actually in this sort of list. I mean, you've got Murello even. I mean, I think there's I can't remember his name is Harwood something at Forest, isn't he? I mean,
Howard Bellis.
He's 2.3, did all right. A lot of people talking him up in other formats as well. So he's cheap in this. I mean, again, let's watch and see. But I think there's a lot of the budget enablers that you'll see a few come through, and you'll know who they are. I think particularly for those who've not listened to us before, pretty much the 4 previous seasons we were going, premium defense, premium 5 at the back, and all of that. Last year kind of broke that over. God, it's probably about a decade. But I think it's a bit mad. There's a lot of defenders that historically you would probably have looked at, and we're not looking there. And I come back to the point on a premium defender in Garvadol at like 4.5 versus Haaland premium player at 8.5. You only have to have one striker, so you can load up with premiums in loads of places if you save a bit of money. So I'm still on the defense train. You'll probably see that in my team in a bit, but like there's a few. I want a few premiums in this space because you can move off into the form players in other positions generally.
Yeah, really good shout, Luke. Carl, were you interested in defense?
Yeah, I think there's some that you're gonna just have to watch out for. See what the preseason's like.
Yeah.
Monitor more than anything else. And I said to the person last year, and I'll say his name again. You never know. Is it Lewis Hall, the Newcastle left back? And
2.7.
I think So whether he breaks in or not, I wouldn't pick him even if he plays in the friendlies over the weekend, because you just don't know. But Newcastle are going to be a different proposition this year. No Europe, they could just focus on the league. I agree with what Luke said in terms of last year. It was this time last year we moved away from 5 at the back for the first time. And that was before we had last season's crazy situation. And I don't know if you remember, but last season when I was here, I think I quoted the bookies sort of saying, oh, at the moment there's going to be like 1,120 goals is their prediction, and that's quite a bit higher than it was previously, and it's just been moving up. And it turned out I think there's 1,240 goals
Oh my goodness
last
me.
year. So there's well over 100 goals more than they expected the pre-season. If you look at their line at the moment, I think it's 1,220. So you're still no, they may be wrong because things can change quite rapidly because of the extra time, but it does make not having five at the back, and then it's a question, and this is the real question: is it premium or cheap?
Yeah.
Because if anybody's going to keep a clean sheet, not many people do. It'll probably be the premium, and it's like doing that balance. Yeah, and that's the choice. There's plenty of attacking ones there. I like Mitch. Oh well, look, I know I'm a Palace fan, but honestly, Mitchell and Nunes are so attacking. Both of them getting up the pitch. It's so different, and you've got to bear in mind as well. Which teams have got manager changes because their style may change.
Yeah,
So for Palace, obviously we had Hodgson and we've changed to Glasner. Completely different style of play. So you should only look at like really since Glasner took over and the way they play. You'd have the same with Liverpool. I don't know what they're going to do under Slot. They could be fantastic or it could be dire. They may be bargains or they may be like duds. Just have to wait and see.
Agree. Some players I'd add in just some ones I looked at. I thought their price was quite interesting and quite good for what they could maybe offer. I think Murillo at 2.3, Forest, he'd nailed to start. Really good defence, Forest. Really, really good enabler there. Howard Bellis, as you mentioned. Barco has been getting quite a lot of attention at Brighton. We don't know if he's going to play. If he does play and he does nail down that side, he's been on some set pieces and things. He's 2.3 million, which is mega cheap. A few others. Hall, as you mentioned, is 2.7. Livramento, if Trippier leaves, he's probably nailed then at right back. He's 2.9 million for what would be an attacking player in a really good defensive team. Kwanzaa at Liverpool is quite interesting at 3.1 again. So I am caveating all these that they maybe not be banging into your game week one team, but maybe one to quickly look to to downgrade if they're nailed. Kwanzaa's 3.1. Maatsen at Villa is 3 million. Udogie at Spurs is 3.1 million. I mean, he was 2.8 last year, and at one point he was in everyone's team, and I think he had a red card, then he got injured, but at 3.1 it looks good. Everton defence, we've already mentioned. Michaelenko 2.9, Branthwaite 3, really cheap. Palace, Munoz, as you mentioned, Carl 2.7, he's mega cheap. Mitchell 3.1. Dallo is quite cheap, 3.3. He was cheap last year as well. And Pedro Porro is 3.8. Got him as my kind of mid-price one. Looks really attacking in pre-season. And I think if I was to pick a premium, so I'm going the opposite to Luke. I don't think I'm going to pick many or any premium defenders, but if I would, it'd be Guardiola at 4.5 and Gabriel at 4.3. So just a few, lots of cheap defenders there to kind of choose from. A few will come through. And midfielders, Carl, what are your thoughts on the kind of midfielders you're going to be picking in game week one?
Yeah, well, a lot of it depends on who you're picking in your defence. So it depends on whether you need a bit of budget. I think a midfielder is a good place to find a budget. You mentioned Gomez from Wolves.
Yeah,
he could very well go in there. I've already mentioned Mosley of Ipswich.
Yeah, that's a good shot, Mosley.
And or Walton of Palace could do a good job. Those are the types of. I think I'll have probably one of those cheap ones, probably if depending on what my back line is, and then I would just cherry pick from the top ones. You've got Saka there, Foden, Palmer, Bowen, Eze. Bruno, Bruno's a little bit on the expensive side. Bruno Guerrero from Newcastle, if they've got a bit more focus on the league, he could do. So I'd be going top of the shop a lot more with maybe one enabler, because I think that'll be affordable.
Cool. Thank you, Carl. And Luke, who catching your eye in midfield?
I can't see past Palmer or Foden, to be honest, and I think so that they're both my premiums. I think there's a few in that mid price bracket, sort of what's he called, Bailey at Villa is in my team,
4 million.
because all his two main competitors for scoring the goal have gone, and it's his, he won the shirt off people last year, and he's got it, so it's his to lose, and he was good. I'm interested. I actually was going to ask, with Carl's prediction, how far off he would have been off Eze if he was normalised at 38 games, because I think he's particularly because he came on as a sub for a lot. So if he'd been playing sort of 90, not sort of 10 minutes, what would he have looked like? So I think he could be a really interesting one. At the budget end, I think Gomez is probably this year's cheat code if he goes as we all think, and a lot of people who know what they're talking about backing him. Yeah. Smith Rowe's move to Fulham, really, really interesting. So he, at 3 million, I think he could be really, really strong. He won't be in my main team, but I do a budget team every year where I have a ridiculous amount of money left over, and the last 2 years it's been my best performing team because I've got so much money to bring in whoever I want who's in form. So he's straight in the midfield there because he's going to start, and he's an attacking player in a team that isn't that bad going forward. So yeah, that's probably who I'd shout out.
Yep, some really good shouts there, Luke. In midfield, Gibbs White have put in at 3.4. Think could be good. Good for tackles and goals and assists. Could potentially be on set pieces as well. I've got Bruno Fernandes. He turned my head today after having a quick look at the stats. He was
too expensive. He's too expensive.
He was the fourth highest midfielder in the whole game.
Value and
he was dreadful last year. He was awful. Yeah, but you can't have 11 value players, Lou. You can't just have 11 players and have 15 million sat doing nothing. You've got to spread the cash somewhere. So I think he's one I've kind of turned my head a little to. He is expensive, right? We know that, but he plays 90 every game. He's on penalties. He gets tackles as well. So fourth highest mid, and he was dreadful. I say United were dreadful last year. Imagine if they had a good season. He could score 300 points.
Rashford's cheaper as a striker.
Yeah, but so he's bloody awful.
Yeah, he was, but so were most of Man United, to be fair. But the year before, Rashford, what did he hit? 250 plus?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So he's got it in him. Don't know. Watch and see. I wouldn't start with him, but I do.
yeah. I don't know. I'm tempted, honestly. And forwards, again, lots of cheap ones. João Pedro is 3.3. Again, a lot depends on if he starts, new manager. Armstrong, you shouted out, Carl, 3 million. Looks to be, what you want is a starter every week on penalties, and you've got him there. He looks really cheap at 3 million. Muniz at Fulham is 3.4. He's very cheap. Chris Wood's probably gonna start the season, 3.5. Good fixtures. And then there's Semenyo, you called out earlier, Luke, at 2.8. I mean, crazy prices. And Brereton Diaz, who's obviously just signed, is also 2.8 million as well. So if you are looking for these mega cheap players, they are around in a 1 year, 2.7, as we said.
Mateta as well, isn't there? As well,
Mateta. I think I want to say Mateta's 4 million. Yeah. Isaac at 5.1 is just, I think, an absolute steal. That is way too cheap for Isaac. He should be 6 million. And mentioned him earlier, but if Solanke goes to Spurs, 4.4 million, I think absolute shoe in there. He's gonna be insane. So, Carl, thoughts on forwards?
Well, you just named them all.
No, not far off. Anyone I missed?
You mentioned him and you gave him a shout out. Isaac, Yeah, he's the first one I look for when I look at the value of the strikers from what they scored last year, and they've got a good start. So assuming he keeps injury free, I think he's the best one. There's quite a few in there that are good value. Cunha of Wolves at 3.6
Yeah,
million.
definitely.
Already mentioned Armstrong. I do like Pedro of Brighton. Again, with the caveat, because I'm not sure if he's injured or got a little knock.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's like they've got other strikers as well. Which reminded me, they've also got that chap they signed from Newcastle, somebody else to monitor. I don't know how you get on. Is it Mincer or something? They got him from Newcastle.
Oh, I'm not sure from Newcastle. They've signed Minte. He's a 2.9 million forward who looks really,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
sharp.
that's him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's meant to be like really, really good. No,
Yeah,
whether he's good enough to be starting or not, but that's something to keep an eye on for the future.
Yeah.
Of course, Brighton, new manager, you don't know they're going to play. Now, we haven't mentioned it when we was talking about value. So I should also say Salah, poor value, but that may change, right? Because I don't know they'll play this year under new manager. He's a bit iffy. Haaland, bad. Don't get him. Poor
Really?
value.
He's in my
Right.
team.
Take him out.
Ah,
He's,
Haaland and Bruno are in my team, 100%.
it's a problem
Good.
well, honestly, there will be times you probably will want them in when you've got transfers to burn and they've got cup games and you know a really prime run of fixtures. But except for that, he's too expensive. Um, and also Europe a few injury issues that he's having. Now, most players, you take them out, like those midfielders I mentioned, you take one out, you can replace them with another. They're two a penny. He's so expensive. If he picks up a knock, you'd have like okay, you buy somebody else for 6 million, then you still got 2.5 million to burn. So you'd have to make two transfers. So honestly, well, don't listen to me because you're better than me. But if you did, I'd recommend don't buy it.
We'll have a chat at our teams at the end, but yeah, no, I appreciate from a value point, obviously, but like I say, you can't have 11 value players. You'll just have so much money left over. There's no point, but we'll talk about it at the end when we talk about our teams. Luke, anyone to add on forwards?
So the only one we haven't talked about, I think. So this is purely on pre-season, and I'm assuming Watkins isn't back, but Rodgers has got quite a few goals and assists in pre-season at Villa.
He's a forward in this game, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a forward. So he could be interesting because he's dirt cheap. So yeah, he's probably the only one I'm sort of thinking. Yeah.
Yep. Good
Probably
shout.
won't play, so it's a big old risk. But imagine if he does, then that could be great.
I know much you chaps love talking about budget. We've got Luke's budget 11 up now. Do you want to walk us through it, Luke? Is this your game week 1 team?
It will be. Honest to God, I will. Every year we say this, we all go away and change our teams loads. So I might but we didn't really talk about Vicario. He's only gone up a little bit, and Spurs can't be as leaky as they were last year. And he's still 3.2 or 3. It was 3.3 or 3.1. I can't remember, but he's still cheap for a potential top 6 type team.
Yeah.
Branthwaite 3 million straight in. Mitchell talked about him. Udogi, you shouted him out, so 3 point something low threes again. Sensei we talked about. So there's a load of these budget players, and again, the beauty of this budget approach to the game is with this team on the screen, there's 16.5+ million in the bank. So literally, I can bring in anyone at any point, and so I'm never wasting a transfer because I don't have to find the funds. I've always got the funds. And Gomez, Smith Rowe, Bailey, so Bailey's the premium in this team at 4 million. Wow. But they're all nailed in my mind, and they'll all start. So so I think that Semenyo, again, sub 3 mil. Rogers, I can't remember what his price is, but really low again. I mean, Rogers will probably go, but I will have a team post this conversation that has 11 players and at least 15 million in the bank. And last 2 years, that's been my team of the 5 that I enter that's done the best.
That's
because
incredible.
I don't have to waste transfers
Of course.
downgrading. It's always an upgrade. Every move is an upgrade. It's brilliant.
Yeah, superb. Just remind everyone, we do get 5 teams, so Luke's not talking about just entering the one. This isn't
my main
team. One of his 5 teams, but it always ends up being your main team.
Yeah, well, sadly, it shows how bad I am these days.
We've had a few questions, which we will go through now. I'll try and just ask the ones that we haven't answered already. Firstly, Matt Woolley is just on about, do you each use all 5 teams, or 4 excluding Cloud FF? So if you are playing Cloud Fantasy Football this year, you use your fifth team for that. If anyone doesn't know what Cloud is, go to Cloud Fantasy Football. I think it's .co.uk, and go and have a look at that. It's the new variant of Sky that Ian Parrin and FF Stuff have built. If you are interested, go and play. Obviously, Sky, as we say, is ceased, which is really sad, but the guys are trying their best to make it work. But we're going to use a TFF team for that. And he asks around kind of strategies. Do you pick same multiple teams or different teams? So I tend to pick I'm probably going to do one or maybe one completely different team. I'm probably going to do a block defense. Just answer. I'm going to do different teams with different sort of strategies and hope one hits. If Everton keep 3 clean sheets in 4 and you're over, the Everton defense, you get off to an absolute flyer. So, Carl, what do you do with your 5 teams, or do you just enter the one?
Well, I change it every year. What before I talk about my teams, the person who won it last year, not only did he keep the same, he had one team, as far as I understand, till the very end. Part of the reason as well is there are many different competitions you can enter. So there's naturally the main leaderboard, which he won, but I think there's a Facebook page league, which he won, but you can only have one team in that, and then he had another team in the one team league and another one in the Twitter league and whatever. So sometimes you can have one team and just put them all into the various teams. They won't let you put it into the multiple leagues. This year, so last year I had 5 different teams, and except for the one that I have in the cash league, which you're in, and the hub league, by about November, I just concentrated on the one and just let the other 4 fall aside, because you play so many fantasy formats. If it's so far down, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree.
But this year, I'm going to have my main team here. I may do 2 other ones with a slight variation, and if they will fall aside. And I'm also going to do one. There's a 3 Lions league where there's a £500 cash prize, where you can only have English players. So I'm going to probably do one of those teams this year. And I think there's also a prize for the team with the most goals. So in that team, I'll have Haaland. You don't care about
only
value.
In that team. Only in that team.
Yeah, so you get all the top goal scorers you can, and obviously you don't care about your goalkeeper, so don't score goals. So whoever's cheapest. So that's what I'll be doing this year.
Nice one, Carl. And Luke, yourself, how will you be balancing yours? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. It depends how motivated I am towards the last day or two. So I always do 3. Occasionally I'll do 5, but because I like to use a different tactic in each team. And so I have my main team, which is the one I do on the day it comes out, and I'll tinker away until the probably the 11th hour on this. I have another team where I basically go and listen to loads of stuff on all the formats, and then I do a team after, because the first team I pick I always do before I've listened to anyone, just to see how different it is. And then the third team, as I talked about, is the budget one that I do, because it gives me so much more flexibility. Now, occasionally, if I've got a bit more time, then what I'll do with the last 2 is do block defenses of 2 teams that I really, really fancy, but from really cheap teams. So, for example, a Palace block defence or an Everton block defence would be probably the two that I'd be looking at this year.
Yeah.
And then the money goes so much further when you do that. So those are the sort of teams where I might have Haaland. They occasionally go off to absolute flyers, and suddenly that's all I care about is those teams.
Exactly.
But that, yeah. So I basically use 3 teams, 2 for proper, 1 for a bit of an experiment thing, and then if the other 2 are luxury. Yeah. But I have a lot of respect for James and what he managed to do. It's an unbelievable feat to do that. But I guess the management's a bit easier if you're making the same transfer in all the teams.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Keeps the admin low.
Planet FPL, James looks like he's going to be playing for the first time. I think he's going to be playing Cloud Fantasy, I'm guessing, as well. But he says, not one for questions, but just left this image and simply say discuss. So he's put 4 midfielders in there. He's put Bruno Guimaraes, McAllister, João Gomez, and Casado. So probably tackle monsters in here. He's basically asking, is this a midfield? I'm assuming he's asking this from a Telegraph view and not a Cloud view. Yeah, what's your thoughts on that midfield, Carl?
They are the top 5 tackle players. Individually, they can be good, but not as a 5, because there's much better higher scorers in there than that. Yeah. I can't say which one's off the top of my head. Gomez, I think, is the best out of the 5, but you need the goals and bigger points, because, like you say, if you don't spend your budget, you're not making the most of it. In terms of if it's Dole, well, we aren't going to go into Dole Sky, but yeah, they wouldn't be too bad in that format.
And Luke, same, I suppose. Just
yeah, I mean, I particularly like Bruno Guimaraes because he was in my first draft. He's just that whatever it is in my head, he always seems to have played more games than I think he's played. But he's got everything. He tackles and he gets offensive stuff, and at that sort of mid-3s price, he's in there with not many people will select him, but he'll tick over, and you can always downgrade him. But because he's a bit more, it's easier to go from him to someone else. You know, if you only have to find 500,000 or something, he's a nice placeholder. Less sure on the other 2, but those 2, anybody with those 2 in the starting team, you're making sensible choices, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Can't argue with any of that. FPL Sparta says, are any of us playing Cloud FF this season? I'll be giving it a go. Are you guys giving it a go?
I'm torn at the moment because family and work commitments. Yeah. So adapting to another format is. So I suspect I know what I'll do in the 11th hour. I'll be like, right, I'm in. I've had loads of people pestering for me, so I think it's a great concept. It's just finding the time to get my head around a new game. And
yourself, Carl? You gonna have a go?
Yeah, no, it's a great format, and I think what the organisers doing is absolutely fantastic. It's duplicating the Sky game. It is a great game. I probably won't be playing it this year. It's just because of the time element of having that extra game. It is quite hard because that one does take a little bit more of a thought process because you're looking for captains on a thing every day.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if I've got the headspace to do that at the moment, so not this time.
And he also asks, what's your best ever TFF rank? Carl, what's yours? Do you know?
Well, I've never got the prize, any of the prizes. To be honest, I don't know. I think I finished in the top 20 once, but I don't keep any of my ranks, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm much more. I enjoy playing the mini leagues and trying to beat you.
Yeah, that's right.
I fail every year, so I know my record is 0 wins, but I don't know how many times you played. But I just love playing and enjoying it and looking at the live ranks. But once the season's gone, I forget and I just look forward to the next one. Sorry.
No, it's fair enough. Luke, yourself?
So I'm getting my best finishes were a couple of decades ago, and sadly they don't. This is when everything was on post. Where you'd either have to phone up your transfers or post them in. So I know I've had a couple of seasons where I've done very, very well because I know I was very close to the winners. So I don't quite know. I know, definitely be top 100, but probably close to a couple of top 20s, because I've had a few years where, like, I've a block defensive like Man United in the Ferdinand Vidic era where they were just phenomenal. So I don't actually know, but I know I'll have a few top 100 finishes, but I don't know precisely. Never won it, so wish I had.
Yeah, same. I don't know. I've had the last. I think I've got better more recently than I was before. I think in the last 4 or 5 seasons, I think I finished around the top 100 in all or most of the last 4 or 5 years. I did get up to 4th.
A couple of seasons
ago. I did fall back out of the top 10 or 20, but it just seemed to finish consistently well, but apart from that season, never really trouble the leaders. But this year's going to be different because I'm going to go for Morsey and Haaland as my premium budget duo. We've answered a lot of other questions around is 5 at the back dead off Carl? Yep, it looks to be dead at the moment, and 3 up top. We've gone through a lot of cheap forwards. We've gone through best value attacking midfielders as well. Richie asks, how important is clean sheets versus attacking involvement for defenders, and which is more important? That is a good question. Do you go for clean sheets or do you go for attacking involvement for defenders, Luke?
Both. This is why I like attacking players on premium teams. So you'll see it with mine. I mean, I've got White and I've got Gvardiol, and there's a reason for that they've got even chance of getting both. And so I think it's really important. I think when you're going for certain teams like Everton, this is why I think they're great, because you pick Everton because they play Dyche football, so it's going to be 1-0 loss if they lose. So it's not heavy. They may, they're going to pick up enough clean sheets. You're not really looking at Everton for major attacking returns, in my view. I know some of them can do that, but you're not buying them for that. You're buying them for clean sheets and their value. Yep. So I think both are really important, and a clean sheet is worth as much as a goal for a striker. So if you've got a defender who picks up like 15 clean sheets, same as a striker who scored 15, and he'll be a lot cheaper in this game.
Absolutely. Yeah, agree. Carl, what do you look for in a defender?
I think it's sort of changed over the years. Naturally you want both, and it's a balancing act. I think if you're going away from premium, then you do want some attacking prospect, because you aren't going to get a lot of clean sheets. But even the premium teams, they always seem, not always, because Arsenal had about 18 clean sheets last year. But you have a bit more risk with some of the players, especially now with Arsenal, with some of the new defenders they bought. Will they replicate it? And they cost more. So it's what you give up. Like, I would go for the clean sheets if what you gave up top wasn't that much. So if I found like really good value up top, then I may put the clean sheets much more and premium. But I'm much more like Palace, Forest were last year, and Everton. There's the defenders that attack a bit, and therefore you've got a mixture of both. They aren't going to concede a lot, and they've got attack in return. So it's a mixture. I'm a bit more towards the attacking bit, because there's not a huge difference in price.
Yeah, and the same this year as well. Like I say, historically it's been premium defenders, but definitely looking at a bit more the value in defence to be able to afford attackers. I've had a couple of questions from Billy and FPL Fish around new to the Telegraph, and have played Sky and things like that. Hopefully the intro we gave will give you a bit of a flavour of TFF, and obviously we've gone through lots and lots of players, and the kind of pros and cons for going for certain ones as well. I would recommend. I'll put a link to it actually in the description. I think Ollie Poole on the Hub has written a fantastic article. I think it was Ollie around the differences between Sky and Telegraph, and also Paul McNulty wrote one for the Telegraph as well, around the differences between Sky and Telegraph, and kind of how you can take your Sky experience and kind of make the most of it for playing the Telegraph. And in terms of staying focused and engaged, FPL Fish, I honestly would join our WhatsApp group, become a pro member and join in. You'll do well not to do well if you join our WhatsApp group. So just click in the link and join in, mate. It's good stuff. I give kind of weekly voice notes and weekly team reveals and bits and pieces. It is a slow game in the first half of the season. We kind of touched on it already around just taking it easy, building around the team, just settling in, not using transfers, which is boring. But tell you what, the second half ain't boring, and I tell you what, winning's not boring either. So we'll help you on your way there. We've answered a lot of the questions already. Just we had a couple more just around Arsenal and City defences. How important is it to get any of those in? I don't think I've got either at the moment. I think I'm a more budget defence. Carl, what's your thoughts on how important it is to get Arsenal and City defenders or covering it off?
I really don't know how to answer that. At the moment, I've got to block Arsenal.
Spoiler alert.
Block Arsenal. So I think they're great. But I may sort of like tear it up and not have any because of the signings they've made, and who's going to play. And City, game time, and secondly, they always concede. So I wouldn't say they're essential as much. I don't know why they always seem to concede. Guardiola, is great as end of last year, whether you replicate. Arsenal is like, I remember a few years ago, Liverpool had 19 clean sheets, and someone else like Man City before that 19. Will Arsenal replicate that same level? I think it's not essential because you can spend your money well elsewhere and get good defence. So it's not essential, and I may rip mine up. So I'll listen to you guys before I finish my team off.
Yeah.
A very vague answer there, Carl. Before we move on to Luke.
Can I chuck in? Like, so I hadn't looked at Carl's team. I'm loving that. It's a no-brainer in this format because there are no subs. You go Arsenal because three of the back four. Well, the keeper, three of the back four. It's going to be who it's going to be. You go for someone like Kyle Walker for City. He's brilliant, but he'll end up playing 2/3 of the game, and there's no predicting whether he'll get dropped for 3 in a row or whether he'll play 3 in a row. Like, you have no idea. So in this game, I've got Gvardiol because of his attacking returns, and it doesn't really matter if he misses a few games. He'll play 34 of the 38, if fair. But it's a no-brainer. You go for the Arsenal in this format because the ones that Saliba is going to play all the games if he's fit. Yeah. Simple as.
Yep, agree.
So Arsenal.
Arsenal the two, but I'm not sure I'm going to have either. I might do. Once I've banged in my 5 enablers, I'll be able to have anyone I want, I think. So we'll have a look what change.
Can't afford anyone.
What change we've got now. Let's have a quick look at our teams, our current track. Obviously, we are still 9 days away from Game Week 1. These teams are going to change. I've got yours up first, Luke. Do you want to talk us through it?
So I've got Rare in goal. Pretty much means that as a keeper enabler appears, I think we have talked about 2 or 3 actually. So I can easily drop down. So I can drop him down by 1 million if I need to find 1 million. So very good keeper. I think they'll be the top 3 defences. So he's solid, and like I said earlier, with keepers, it doesn't really matter. They're all much for muchness for the top teams. He'll be points per million. He'll be grand. Gvardiol, White, and Branthwaite at the back. So White, he's the attacking Arsenal nailed on player, so I'll choose him over the others because there's an attacking return as well as a clean sheet. He's going to have a point to prove after all his England shenanigans and deciding to not turn up, which I read some of the rumours. I kind of support where he's at with that. And then midfield, I've got Palmer, Foden, who I think are the best 2 midfielders in the game. I think both are better than Saka personally because they're cheaper. They're all much of a muchness, but any of those three is fine, but they're two cheaper ones.
They are.
Gomez,
They are a lot cheaper as well, aren't they? Saka's 6.4, I think, and Palmer's 5.8, and Foden's 5.4. Like Foden's over $1 million cheaper than
Saka's
Saka.
5.8. So
Saka's 5.8. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, I thought he
Palmer
was
and
more.
Saka are same price, but
Okay.
I personally think Palmer's better for returns. And then Bailey is a bit of a. I always like to have one punt on a player, and so he's I would also, if I have the funds, Bailey may go back to Trent, because I think Trent has just for 7-8 years been the best player, like points per value of the premiums, and he was terrible last year for points. And he won't. He's going to play, so he's not going to be as bad as he was. He'll revert to the mean, I think. So if I can find money there, then I've got Watkins and Isaac, because I think they're very, very solid. Both are going to return well. There will be better value players, but again, it gives me easy options. It's worth noting both are about 2.5 million cheaper than Haaland, and were very close on points last year because they play every game. Haaland doesn't. And then I've got Mateta as a bit of a hold. I know we were chatting earlier, and he's off at the Olympics at the moment. I think he'll be really good. I've just got to figure out, do I want to start with him, or do I chuck someone else in there? And so I think I could, with Raya, Bailey, and Mateta, I could swap them around, and I can bring in a cheaper keeper, Bailey go to Trent, or Mateta go to Trent, and something like that. But I think, there's sort of 8 players there that are nailed. I'm not going to be changing any of my back three. Palmer, Foden, Gomez are in, and Watkins and Isaac are in. They're all very, very solid. So I'll not be setting the world alight from the start, but I won't. You don't win it on day one, but I definitely won't be losing it. So
nice team, Luke. Really, really good balanced team there. Some excellent players. I think you've talked me around a bit on a couple of players as well, like and White maybe and things. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we can afford. Carl, got your current Arsenal blocky looking team. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, I've gone for a bit of a basic team, to be honest.
Looks good, mind.
So what I've done is I thought I'd go for the 2 players that I identified coming up would be Mosey of Ipswich, who I put in as midfielder, and I put Armstrong up front. And I think they're good value. And then I just went through and thought, who scores the most points left? And that's how I picked my team release. So I went for, in goal, I went for Raya, and the back three of Saliba, Gabriel, and White.
Yeah.
In midfield, I went Palmer, Foden, Saka, Gordon, and my other spot was Isaac up front.
Can't argue with that, Carl.
Yeah, well, except and this, I always have this. I do like the team, okay, but then I think, I wouldn't mind Gomez. What about Pedro of up front instead of Armstrong? There's only 0.1 difference between them. But then Pedro's a bit injured at the moment. And then you hear about Arsenal buying some defenders, and one of them, Timber's coming back, and it's like, oh, will they too much of a rotation risk? I do like the Palace defenders. So, and the thing that I mentioned about Palmer, if I thought Palmer was going to score to 22 goals like he did last year, I'd be happy with my team. But the bookies say 15 goals, and that's like, has come to my attention since I made the team, and I think, oh, do I want Palmer? And so I may rip it all up and start again, but I really do like that team. Everybody looks nailed and solid, top scorers in points. So I may stick with it. I do like the team.
Nice, Carl. You should definitely have this as one of your 5 teams. It's really, really good.
Yeah, agreed.
And just on Timber, funny one actually. I started with him in my Game Week 1 team last year. He was cheap. He was 3.1 million. If you remember, he got injured out for the season about half an hour into Game Week 1. So I had to, after all the careful planning and everything else, I had to make a transfer on the first Sunday of the season to take Timber out of my team, which hurt. That was an early one. That was. Quickly at my team. mine looks a bit different, but it's definitely going to change based on the conversations we've just had. I've got Flecken in goal on here, but with the use of Henderson, I think I'm going to start with Henderson at 2.8. If I was going for a premium, I'd go for a Raya. I think I am going to go with both Munoz of Palace 2.7 and Murillo of Forest 2.3. I just think they're just so cheap. Both pretty good defenses. Like I say, it's what it allows you further up the pitch. I've got Gvardiol on this team, but I don't think I'm going to go for Gvardiol. I don't know who I'm going for yet, but maybe White potentially there. But yeah, I think I'm definitely going to go for Munoz and Murillo because I just think they're really cheap and they can do really well. At the moment, I've got a midfield of Palmer, Gordon, Saka. I've gone for Eze. I notice he's not in either of your teams. 3.9 million, I think, looks really good value. I'm very interested in Bruno Guimaraes, I must say. I think at 3.9 million, I think he is as well. I think he could be a steal. And I do like Bruno Fernandes as well. So I need to have a think about. It's obviously going to be Saka or Bruno or something like that. But I do like the thought of Bruno. I could even take Haaland out for Bruno potentially. I'll have to think about that. And I've got a front three at the moment of Isak, João Pedro, and Haaland. So obviously, because I've gone for Murillo and Munoz, that's enabled me to get Haaland, and I've got a cheap keeper as well. But that's my team at the moment. Like I say, I'll probably enter a few different variations around this. I'll probably have one with no Haaland and one with Haaland and a couple like a really cheap defense, more premium defense as well. But I think what's good, I think they've priced everyone really well this year. I think it's allowed for massive variations of teams. I don't think there's a template at all. Look how different our three teams are completely different. So I don't think there's a template. So I just think it's a really interesting game. Any thoughts on my team before we close?
No, I love the Munoz shout. I've just moved a couple of my not sure players, and I've now got Munoz and Saka in, and my team looks much better for it. So thanks, mate.
There we go, mate. Here to help. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Just a couple of messages. Firstly, many thanks as usual, Luke and Carl. I've got to say, it's probably one of the favourite episodes I've done with you guys over the years. Really enjoyed that. And thanks to all our loyal watchers and listeners for their great questions and comments, and and your continued support. We really do appreciate it. Luke, where can people get hold of you?
Easiest way is within the WhatsApp group that we're in. Bit less frequent on Twitter these days, but if you do want to get me on Twitter, I will respond generally within about a week these days. But it's at FPL_equation is my handle on there. And
Carl, thank you so much. Thank you for all the stats. So all the first half, all the data was all pulled together by Carl. Amazing work as usual. Carl pulled out some real bargains for us there. Where can people get hold of you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Darkest Jungle. That's where you can find me. I must admit, I don't enjoy going on there at the moment, and haven't done for some time. I only want the football stuff, and there's so much other stuff that it makes me really sad. But the football season's nearly here, so hopefully it'll be flooded with all football news, and it'll be a bit more jolly.
And positivity, that's what we want, isn't it? Football and positivity, that's what we want in life.
That's right.
And my handle is at FFH_Fergie. Just to say, it's not a Hub affiliated league, but I do run a £10 per team league. If you are interested, follow me on Twitter or X at FFH_Fergie. Drop me a message. I will post. I'll be posting a reminder as well. We had 90 teams last year, so it's a massive pot. Hopefully get over £1,000 pot this year. That would be really good. Even though Jays Ingram absolutely mopped it up last year, won the whole thing, won all the hub things, won that as well. Hopefully we can catch him this year. This video and recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub. So like I say, we've renamed the channel now from Sky to TFF and Nip and a Half Podcast, with all the major podcast versions. With the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watch, we really would appreciate a like. Remember to subscribe. Don't forget about our how to play Telegraph Fantasy Football and how to win a Telegraph Fantasy Football guides. The links are below. And the biggest tip, as I say, I would give you if you wanted, the best chance of doing well and winning your mini leagues, we have got a dedicated Fantasy Football Hub WhatsApp chat, WhatsApp group. You do need to be a pro member for this. Again, the link's in the description below. But we share our teams, our thoughts. I get weekly voice notes. You also get access to my Game Week 1 team and weekly team reveals every week. A no-brainer if you want to do well and win your mini leagues. Just a reminder as well, on this channel, Paul McNulty, an absolutely fabulous Telegraph player and all-round fantasy player, and I will be chatting every Monday, streaming live on this channel, chatting around TFF and Dream Team and FPL for around half an hour, 45 minutes every Monday on this channel, so make sure you subscribe. And with all that, we wish you the very best of luck for the start of the season. We'll probably be back. I think we generally come back in kind of either the second or third international break. Like I say, because this game is quite a slow burner, we don't pod regularly because all of the advice would be every week is save your transfers, save your transfers. Luke, what's your advice this week? Save your transfers. Carl, what's your advice this week? Save your transfers. So that's sell Haaland. So that's Follow Fantasy Football Hub for more tips. Sell the best striker in the world. But yeah, we'll probably do one. I think we generally do one around October, November maybe. But hold those transfers back for the first half of the season. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the summer. Enjoy the tinkering, and goodbye for now.